Ooh, welcome back to Second Breakfast. We fixed our air conditioning in our home. We have hot water. We have electricity. We have Wi-Fi. We are functioning
We're
adults.
good to go.
But most importantly, and the reason I sound alive and excited today is that we have our one and only co-host. We have our special guest. Tristan is here to help us with our House of the Dragon coverage. I guess Maggie's here too.
I'm always here. Thanks, Cam.
What
Take me for
a
granted.
twist. Longtime friend of the show, Tristan here. Super excited to be on with you guys. It's been way too long since we did this, and we're going to talk about something that I don't personally think was garbage. Throwback to Malignant.
Oh, that's right. You hated it. That's why we had you on.
It was a fun point counterpoint. Though.
That was fun. Yeah. This is going to be different because we're all just going to be happy together.
But the podcast is just a recorded version of what we used to do after Game of Thrones episodes, where we would just call and bullshit about it for 3 hours. So
right.
We get to do that again. I guess that's a good place to start. So this is the premiere of House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel that aired Sunday night on HBO.
Cam, what was the first episode called?
The Heirs of the Dragon.
Right, and that's H-E-I-R.
We're going to spoil the shit out of it, obviously.
We're not going to recap it because it was on yesterday.
Yeah, go get a free trial.
Figure it out.
Piece of shit. Watch the episode. So yeah, first impressions. What'd you guys think?
Fun fact, before we get into it, free trial, that is exactly how I finished out the series finale of Game of Thrones.
Were you so fed up that you just gave up?
I rode through the last 4 episodes on a hubcap. That last one was on my final week of my free trial. And I was like, you guys aren't getting a single penny more out of me. So that's my accomplishment. And looking back on it, great idea. Because talk about ending with a fizzle.
Truly.
And that is the weird shadow that hangs over this. The reason I had to ask, did you enjoy the episode, is because the last season was so divisive.
Yeah, right.
How skeptical were you coming into this new show, both of you? Because it's been years now.
Well, I wasn't that skeptical, honestly. I was pretty excited because I knew from the beginning that George was involved and that it wasn't them riffing on a book he hadn't written yet.
And shutting him out of the whole process.
Yeah, and the trailer looked good, like we talked about. So I had pretty high hopes, actually, which worked out, I think.
How about you, Tristan?
Yeah, I think I agree with Maggie on that one. I was definitely excited and hopeful. It sort of felt like this was a redo. This was another bite at the apple because they know, I know, everybody knows that they sort of fumbled the ending there. And for all of the reasons that you guys talked about like a week or two ago, George's involvement with it again and sort of, learning from that past mistake. And sort of charting a course that's already been, laid out in front of them versus, going rogue. I had a whole lot of hope for the series, so that outweighed my disappointment previously. So I'm very glad that I went in with that because I was not disappointed.
Well, yeah, I think also the disappointing ending of Game of Thrones for me was not, it's pretty unexpected. It was really, really good. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And so I was used to it being really good and, exceeding my expectations. And so that felt like an outlier. So I was like, oh, well, it's going to be good again. It also just felt like a hopeful moment for it to turn around and please me again.
I think it helps that they swapped out the writers for someone who's close to George and extremely loyal to the source text.
Yeah.
I think it helps that they have the source text complete so they can chart out everything before they even shoot the first scene. But also that they kept a lot of the directors because the visual look made me feel so at home. I mean, one scene in, I just felt like I was home and I was so happy. And then the writing, impressed me for the rest of the hour.
Yeah, it felt very. It felt like it belonged in the Game of Thrones universe. I mean, it was his own thing. It wasn't exactly the same, which I think was good, but it definitely felt like it belonged, which was helpful.
It was like a homecoming, right?
Yeah.
It definitely felt like being welcomed back after like maybe you were just at college for a semester and your parents prepared a little thing for you as you came back in. So we got all those Game of Thrones beats right? We got the introduction to the sprawling storylines. We got a bunch of new characters. We got the violence in there. Obviously, there was a lot more sex here than we saw at the end of the final few seasons of Game of Thrones. So it was sort of a return to form, I would say, and reminding everybody, hey, here's what you fell in love with. We're going to give you a lot more of that.
A couple of days ago, as just sort of preparation to dovetail back into this world, because I think we all had a bad taste left in our mouth. I mean, the whole planet did after the last couple seasons. A couple of days ago, Maggie and I watched the Game of Thrones pilot. And I mean, we just completely fell in love with this whole world again and the visual language. And I feel like this pilot, even though they're very different shows, they have very different sense of scale, they conjure the same magic. But the other one had more overt incest. I feel like this one, it's implied.
Yeah. Well, right. Because we're all primed to expect the incest, especially with Targaryens. And so...
Yeah, what... to start with, like, incest watch, because there is a quota to be filled. Were there
that's why I came here.
were there any you thought could develop? Any relationships you saw beginning?
Yeah, Damon. He was being real creepy to... I had to write
Rhaenyra?
down Rhaenyra. Yeah. I was like, ew.
And he's her uncle?
Yeah, yummy. Now, to be fair, Game of Thrones spoiler, Jon, in fact, has sex with his aunt. So, it checks out.
What?
So you're saying that's fine because you saw it on TV?
No. I mean, the worst part isn't even that he's her uncle. It's that she's a child, but whatever.
Sure.
No, I mean, there's definitely that. I didn't really see it anywhere else, though. Did y'all?
No. Maybe that's why it stuck out so much to me.
I mean, and even then, like, as I was watching it, I don't know if it's because I've been out of the game for a little bit.
The Game of Thrones?
I wasn't. Yes. That was right there.
I was ready.
I gotta pick it up.
It was like whack-a-mole every time I hear the word game.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm gonna just keep setting them up, and you just keep knocking them down. So I mean, I wasn't. I don't know if I was primed for it. So whenever I saw it, it didn't strike me as crazy odd. Now maybe I've been desensitized to the whole Targaryen incest thing. But it just it struck me that he was sort of a creepy character that you don't, his intentions. I mean, you're not really sure what he's about, but I didn't feel overtly icky. His interaction with Rhaenyra,
right.
It was just like, hey, here's this heirloom, right? You get to be connected to our lineage too.
Sure.
And I don't get the sense that she feels uncomfortable with Daemon either. The way that she looks at him, it seems like they have a fairly good relationship. And even whenever you get to the funeral pyre later on in the episode,
right.
Like he was genuinely comforting her at that point in time, and she was receptive to it. It didn't feel like a lot of the male-female relationships we've seen in Game of Thrones where there's one that's clearly got the upper hand, the aggressor or whatever.
Yeah.
And that sense of trust and intimacy is interesting. Like, if she's the heir now to the throne, if eventually Viserys dies and the only person she can feel like she can trust is her uncle Daemon, and she's got all these other weird suitors who want to do political marriages, I could see them getting together and then the whole thing going sideways.
Well, and I think what's also helpful here is that, I mean, I don't know fully, but there seems to be that incest is pretty normalized within the Targaryens.
If not mandatory.
Right. And so not that it's okay and not that can consent because she's a child, but you get the sense that that's not unexpected. And she's like, oh yeah, it's pretty normal that my uncle would try to hit on me. So it's like, she's not that uncomfortable with it because it's pretty normalized. Again, that's still scary, but
so
you know what I mean.
We were texting after the show last night, and Tristan, you said something great. You compared Daemon to a coiled viper.
Oh yeah,
and I thought that was a great way to jump into his character. a couple weeks ago when we talked about House of the Dragon, we did that episode kind of introducing our coverage. We talked about this idea of kind of passing the baton in terms of casting, where you get Sean Bean because he's got the Lord of the Rings credentials, that he brings that authenticity and legitimacy to Game of Thrones. I think Matt Smith as Daemon brings something to this show. Tristan, I don't know if you've seen The Crown, but the first 2 seasons, Matt Smith is Prince Philip.
Right. Yeah. So I've seen a few episodes of The Crown. I've definitely seen him in it. I'm familiar with him from a little bit of Doctor Who as well.
Right.
And I'm just familiar with him as an actor, and I understand like his history and that he's famous, and like he's got some renown, right? And you can feel that when he's in there because he chews the scenery pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's nice because I know that he comes from a long, like his history is mostly good guys. He's gotten away from that a bit. Now he gets to firmly play what seems to be, the show is setting up as the villain, right? But to your point, I think having that famous face in there to sort of anchor the show. Now, we don't know for how long because Game of Thrones has a wonderful history of subverting that immediately.
Right.
But it's nice to have him there because that's like your tent pole, right? We know that we can rely on him to deliver a performance every time he's in the room. So it makes everybody else there who also has an understanding of his history and his background and the fact that he's famous to meet him at that level. So I think it's only going to help the entire cast.
It felt like almost a message to the audience. Having a guy who was just a lead in a prestige court intrigue sort of melodrama like The Crown, which is centered on the machinations of one very powerful family in the same way House of the Dragon is, that you have Matt Smith, who, as Philip, he is in a role of absolute impotence, where his wife is the queen, she's going to be in charge until the day she dies, and he will always be second fiddle. And this is in the 50s and the 60s, where gender roles are that much more intense. So he's always this underdog, kind of resentful failure. And over those 2 seasons, he stews and resents, he rebels, he starts cheating on her and lying to her through decades. And eventually, I mean, his Philip is genuinely not a good dude. And going into this show where Daemon will never be king, it was nice to see Matt Smith kind of blow on that fire a little and expand that character, because he is an unmitigated piece of shit here. And I've never seen him as an actor look happier. He's liberated, he's joyful, and like you said with the Viper thing, he is captivating in every scene.
Yeah, and so sort of the origin for me saying that is it's sort of it feels like a metaphor that is going to play itself out over the season, because we saw the gold cloaks thing where they're just running around accusing people and doling out punishment immediately. But the scene in my mind that I'm thinking of whenever I say that is whenever during the tournament, right? Whenever he goes up against Kristen Cole, that fight right there had all of the hallmarks of Game of Thrones, where I was like, oh my God, what awful thing is going to happen here? Because to your point, they know that we know what to expect from Game of Thrones, right? So they know that we're expecting some crazy grisly death thing to happen right there. And we see, Matt Smith as Daemon get the dagger as he's on the ground. It looks like he's about to, do something crazy, like cut this guy's like Achilles tendon or something, and then, murder him in front of the entire crowd like that. But he doesn't, right? You see it like flit across his eyes for a second, thinking about doing something just awful. And the whole time where Kristen Cole comes up to go get the favor of the princess afterwards, I was just so expecting him to just get murked from behind, right? But the restraint there shows that like he's not irredeemable. He's not pure evil, right? But he is a bastard with a certain degree of honor, right? So I think it's creating a very, very complex character that we're gonna see him, stretch those outer limits. That's where he started. It would have been so easy for him to go off the hinges there, but he's got a modicum of restraint right now. It's gonna be very interesting to see where his character arc ends up.
He's also playing a bigger game because the whole public is watching him.
Right, yeah, he's not going to get the throne if he just killed a random dude in the middle of a tournament when he didn't need to. Also, what's great about that scene is like the twist there is that the big grisly death is not at the tournament.
Exactly.
It's the birth.
Yeah, this was my standout moment of the episode. The fact that you intercut this tournament that you think is going to devolve into this vicious, the last duel gladiator style combat, and it's intercut with childbirth. And there's a clear emphasis. And remember, this is directed by Miguel Sapochnik, who was their big heavy hitter director. He did Battle of the Bastards. He did all of the big heavy battle episodes, which is also why you're expecting the tournament to descend into like Mountain and the Viper territory, where someone's head gets crushed like a grape. But
that scene's so good.
When you're cutting together the childbirth and the tournament, there was such a clear emphasis on the childbirth being the more dangerous and important scene. Like it expanded that, Tristan, that idea of restraint that you mentioned. There's such restraint here when this guy can do an army of White Walkers ripping down our heroes, and we're seeing the drama of the wife bleeding out in the childbed.
Well, and then it makes the violence of the tournament looks so trivial and pointless because it's avoidable and it's entertainment, and you see the crowd being excited, and then you cut to this very real thing that is completely unavoidable and actually has real stakes and is like not only for the life of the mother and the child, but like the state of the realm, because is it going to be a boy? Is the boy going to survive? And that's a whole thing. So it actually like makes the tournament look really weak and stupid and trivial, which makes Daemon's victory have less impact, which again emasculates him even more.
Because he's putting on a production. It's a staged, like you said, a piece of entertainment.
Versus Aemma, who is actually fighting the real battle, and that's her whole metaphor to her daughter.
Right.
So,
yeah, that was my standout moment. Do you guys have a scene that really sold you on the show or has stuck with you since you watched it?
Well, it was the birth. It was the moment. It was the I mean, specifically, it was the moment when she looks at Viserys and realizes what's happening.
Yeah.
When she realizes, oh, they're about to cut me open and I'm going to die. That was really troubling for me, especially
it was just such a powerful. It was just such a powerful like moment, right? Because he has to make that choice, but it's not really a choice, No. and it's there's only one thing that you can decide, right? You're either gonna try to cut the baby out and you're gonna lose the wife, or you're gonna lose both, right? As a product of the breech birth. So, but giving him that choice really that stings, because that's an impossible decision. How can you? It is letting it happen versus saying, you know what, I sign off on you killing my wife. We're gonna roll the dice and see if this is a boy.
Right.
That was just so tough. And then like when she doesn't have a choice in the matter, there were so many like shots and cuts of different people holding down like a different limb or appendage, or it took so many people to hold her down. She did not choose that, and I think that's another, if we want to talk about a lot of Game of Thrones as an analogy for, or just an overt looking or magnifying glass into the relationship of men and women in relation to one another. I mean, this was her big fight, right? This was her her battleground. And ultimately, the stage was stolen from her because she didn't have any agency in making that choice.
Right, because she might have wanted to.
You're subverting that whole idea too.
Yeah. Like she may have wanted to be like, yeah, please save the baby, but they didn't even give her the option. Which just tells you more about the society they're living in, where it's the men are in charge, and women don't get to rule. They don't get to make any big decisions. Even though it's her own life.
This character is now going to be in one episode.
Yeah, that's it.
And now there's this power vacuum.
It was also, Tristan, are you also a C-section baby?
I was. It was close to home because
I was gonna say
you think,
all
oh, I
three
want to
of
be a
us.
knight. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Oh
all
yeah,
three of
super
us
dead.
are C-sections, so that was interesting to watch. But yeah, no, I mean, that really was what stuck out to me. And other than that, it's just every character is so interesting.
And you feel like you know them. You know their motivations, you know their desires, you know even the alliances.
Yeah, I feel like I have a better handle on, and this could just be because I'm now like trained in how to watch Game of Thrones, but like I feel like I have a better handle on all the characters after this episode than I did watching the pilot. Like the first time I watched Game of Thrones pilot, like I was like, ooh, they all look like men with brown hair.
It's a much smaller cast.
That is true. That is very true. And I'm like used to all the Targaryen names sound the same. You know?
I had a question. That old woman, the one who wasn't chosen for the throne when Viserys was, do you think she is going to become an ally to Rhaenyra? Or is she going to be even more bitter that she, again, wasn't chosen for the throne?
No, I think she's going to be a big-time ally because Daemon's going to try and contest it. And what's her name? Rhaenys? Rhaenys is going to be all about...
Why would Daemon contest it if he already has an in with Rhaenyra? Couldn't he just try to marry her instead?
Because now it's him versus her.
Yeah. What do you think, Tristan?
I don't know, though. I think we're going to be looking at like a Cersei Sansa situation because she's going to be so bitter. I mean, there's this child who is going to be in her mind unfit to rule, has absolutely no experience, and ultimately is sitting in a seat that she thinks is rightfully hers. So regardless of whether or not it's Daemon or Rhaenyra, she's going to hate both of them, and maybe Rhaenyra more because she is the woman, quote unquote, that's in the seat. Like if 10 years before they had the same whim, it could have been her. I think her name is Visenya. Is that right?
Her name is Wait, this old woman's name is Rhaenys. Who's Visenya?
I don't know.
Is it?
Rhaenys
did I just make that up?
Yeah, you did.
Get a 3-week
Am I
grace
just
period.
lying?
You know, I just say old lady. No,
that's fine.
I think what could happen is she tries to act as an ally to Rhaenyra, as like I'm gonna be your new mommy now, like I'll help you rule.
And your mentor.
Yeah,
she's gonna be her hand,
but she's gonna like secretly like be taking advantage of her. Like I like the Cersei Sansa comparison, Tristan. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Or even that kind of queen mother role, like the Queen of Thorns had with Marjorie.
Yeah.
Am I getting any of those names right?
Yeah, no, that's right. Or you know how Cersei was with Joffrey.
Yes.
Like,
who cares? The names don't matter anymore. I've declared.
They're all dead.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, I don't mean that she's going to be like this nice ally. Like these are the Targaryens. Like let's not forget. So,
and I was very interested in Rhaenyra. I thought, and I know this is the young version, and we're going to age her up halfway through the season, but I really enjoyed the performance. I thought the writing was great.
Yeah.
Maggie, what did you think? Because we were kind of talking about this in an unkind way yesterday, compared to how poorly the TV show treats Yennefer and kind of butchers her character and ideals of femininity.
Yeah.
What did you think about how the women were written in this show?
Overall, I really liked it. I thought Rhaenys was really interesting. I liked her being bitter and forgotten and put aside and bitter about that. I loved the mother. I loved, what was her name? Aemma.
Yes.
I thought they were saying Emma, but I was like, that can't be it. I liked Aemma, the mother, a lot. I loved the analogy about, well, actually, like the battle we have to fight is childbirth and all that, which makes sense for the world they're existing in. And I liked how close she and Rhaenyra are or were,
right?
R.I.P. And then I thought Rhaenyra I thought she was really interesting. I was really impressed with Millie Alcock. That's the actress. I was really impressed with her performance. I thought I was worried she was going to feel too young and like I wouldn't believe her. But I totally did. I thought she showed a lot of just complex emotion. The one thing I had a hard time with was, I mean, when the line when she's talking to the mom and the mom has that line about, our battlefield is the birthing chamber or whatever the hell. I can't remember what it is. Rhaenyra said something like, I'd rather die on the battlefield in glory. I was like, okay, like I don't have an issue with that idea, obviously, but it just felt like Arya, but worse. I would just feel like there are more creative ways and more interesting ways to get that message across. Like, because the point is that she has always been a disappointment to her father because she's not a son, and she doesn't necessarily want to do, boring women stuff the way that Arya didn't want to. But I feel like her character was too old, and this show is too good and too new to have a line that lazy. I feel like that idea could have been conveyed in a more interesting way instead of like, I want to be a soldier. Like, we know, what I mean?
But like in context, she had just walked up to her mother and everyone was asking how the baby was doing. And she was kind of playing nurse or trying to be the parent to help her mom. And she was saying, no one's checking on you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I liked that.
It would make sense that she would go from that sort of faux paternal role into being what her parents want her to be and almost acting like the son they don't have.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, her not wanting to be a traditionally feminine person, I believe and I like. It's more the way they convey that. And it felt very much like a cheap exposition line. Like, that's not something she would say to her mom. Her mom would already know that.
Oh,
about
that's
her.
true.
You know, like you're not meeting your mom for the first time.
And I felt
her.
the same way.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad
I felt the same way. Like it just felt heavy-handed. It felt heavy-handed as it was happening. It's one of those lines that sort of pulls you out of it, and and you think, oh, okay, the writer was trying to, the writer was checking off this box that they needed to get out.
Exactly.
As they were saying it. But I agree. I think that was that wasn't the norm. That was an outlier of this episode. There weren't that many moments like that.
No.
But I think those few scenes, right, those expository scenes with Rhaenyra, sorry.
Visenya, come on.
That was those were the ones where they shh. Oh man, I sound like an idiot. Anyway, there's two like
these names are
three or four weeks grace. That's they are, and they're all Targaryen, so it's V's and R's and AE's and
they all look the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, I get a pass. I'm giving myself a pass. The blonde one, the blonde girl. So anyway, it didn't feel like most of the episode was like that, but it was those expository scenes where we're establishing that, tomboy, I'm eschewing gender norms thing. Like they had to get that out of the way. And at part of those, I wanted to talk about the relationship between her and Alicent, because I am trying to figure out what that actually is, because it feels romantic on her part, but not on Alicent's part, especially because her father then sends her in to go comfort the king, wink wink, and so like I don't know, is she like a friend or a teacher or a love interest? I'm not sure what that dynamic is.
I did really like that, because I feel like in Game of Thrones you don't get a lot of female relationships, because I mean there are plenty of female characters, but you don't get a lot of just female relationships outside of men. You get like Dany and Missandei, but like that's so power dynamic-y. I mean, so is this one, but I liked that. I liked seeing just two female friends. I thought that was fun, but also there was a little bit of, there's some overlap there.
In the same way, there was a weird over intimacy with Daemon. Rhaenyra has trouble with boundaries.
The Targaryens just don't have boundaries. But I liked that it was like vaguely like there's some element of queerness there that's kind of undefined and doesn't necessarily need to be explained, especially because like, I mean, she's basically her lady in waiting. That's basically what Alicent is, right? And there's always an extreme level of intimacy. Not always. There's often an extreme level of intimacy in those kinds of relationships, just because they are with them all the time and help them get dressed and undressed and all of that, get them everything they need. And also there's like a loyalty that has to be there when you are the person in waiting. So that's all complicated, and I love, like you said, Tristan, I love that it's going to get even more weird and complicated with the dad.
Right.
And so that makes it really awkward. So yeah, I'm really fascinated by that relationship. I thought Allison was really interesting.
Me too. And I feel like she was the provocation of the episode. She wasn't as laid out and established as some of the other characters, so she's the thing I'm most watching for next week.
I want to know more about her. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you also then can't talk about her without talking about her dad.
Yeah.
And how much I told, so I was watching this with Alexandra, my girlfriend, and I told her, I was like, is he a good guy or bad guy? What do we know about him? You know, where's he coming from? Because, you know, the way he is on the council was like, okay, this is the voice of reason. Clearly Daemon is, you know, a little out of hand. Somebody needs to keep him in check. But then also he clearly has these weird ambitions for his daughter, because here you are, it's not made clear how soon after the funeral, but it's not long.
Nope.
You know, he's in there, you know, having a meeting with the king, like, you know, I know that your wife just died, but hey, let's figure out this succession thing. And then that same night, after the king storms off,
right,
he sends his daughter in there as a concubine or something.
In her mom, in her dead mom's
so
dress.
He's clearly playing an angle.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so, so, you know, it's just, and how complicit is she in that, right? Does she know the game that he's playing?
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like it was I have an idea, like all of a sudden, like Otto's been thinking about these things. And it seems like, I mean, again, you have to remember, these are all Targaryens. Somebody who's close with the Targaryens really wants power and is probably going to do a lot of things to get it. And doesn't even Otto say isn't he the one who says the line about, like, all men have always been drawn to the idea of absolute power or something like that, which, like, yeah, but he points it out. And so you're like, what kind of power do you want, Otto? You know?
But I mean, there are some, I mean, look at Jorah and his relationship with Dany. He didn't want any power for himself.
No, he just wanted Dany.
That was the truest love.
I mean, I'm so glad they aged Dany up in the show, because in the book she's 13.
Sure.
And it's so gross. So at least she's like kind of older, but it's still kind of gross. Anyway.
So now that we're jumping into characters more, do you guys have like an early VIP or kind of a dark horse favorite? Who's interesting you the most so far?
I mean, Daemon's pretty interesting, but like that's not really a dark horse. That's pretty obvious. Like he's a fascinating
that's fine
character.
too. I mean, Tyrion was always our favorite. That happens in the pilot.
Daemon and Rhaenyra both. They were the two actors I was most impressed by. No, is it Rhaenyra? Rhaenyra.
The young is Rhaenyra. The young one is Rhaenyra.
These names, man. Okay, Rhaenyra and this is Geralt all over.
See? Vindicated. And now that you've got me on this soapbox, we are going to talk about this for weeks. For weeks. I told them that Maggie was saying Geralt wrong. She would say Geralt. And I sat there listening. I listened every week. I listened every episode. I sat there for weeks blowing a gasket every time that I heard, so in today's adventure, Geralt kills a monster.
You know?
Yeah. So you know, listeners, you have me to thank exclusively for Maggie buttoning it up and giving you the correct pronunciation of the name.
If you had not shamed me so much, it probably would have taken me longer to get there. So thank you. I'm glad we all got there in the end.
It's the only way to learn.
Yeah. Anyway, so what was I saying? Rhaenyra and Daemon.
It's true.
They're great.
Okay. Tristan, what about you?
I don't think there's a clear-cut winner for me yet. I mean, I think you're right. Damon's the obvious choice for now. I think that's who we're supposed to be the most enticed by. You know, Matt Smith got a lot of individual scenes. I don't particularly have like a standout character yet, but I am very interested in learning more about I think his title was like the Lord of the Deep or the Lord of the Tides.
Ooh.
What was his name?
Let me find him for you.
The one who was at the the council table directly across from the king.
It's
at the other end of the table. What was his name?
Corliss? Something like that.
Guy with the dreads?
He had a very cool name, but it was like super D&D, like a lot of Ys in the name.
They all have lots of Ys in Targaryens.
But yes, the guy with the dreads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, he was cool.
He's very interesting, and he played like 4 different sides in that one episode, and he ultimately pledged fealty at the end to the chosen heir.
Right.
But I don't know how much we can trust that.
Because he tried to pledge to Daemon earlier in the episode, in that meeting.
Oh,
yeah,
his name
exactly.
It's Lord Corliss Valerian, the sea snake.
Oh, cool. Valerian. We haven't met one of those,
another
have we?
snake.
Oh, maybe that's where you got Valyria or whatever, because Rhaenys is married to Corliss, and they're Valerian. Okay.
I think he's right there with Alicent, where it's a guy I want to know more about in the next episode. Now that I know the major players, these are sort of the little puzzle boxes we have going forward. But one person we haven't really mentioned at all in 37 minutes is King Viserys, who is sort of the lead of the show, and he's my dark horse performance, because
really
Paddy Considine is giving a fantastically different type of performance here. None of his deliveries of any of his lines, and he was in most of the scenes, felt like the way any other actor in this franchise would deliver a line. Because he's similar to Robert Baratheon in one way, where he's breaking the custom and etiquette expected of a king, but it's not by being a loud drunk like Robert was. I feel like Viserys is remarkably human. I mean, we talked about the agony of him making the decision about the wife or the child, but he's also just volatile. The way he storms out of the meeting, the way he sort of mocks his brother, and then at the end gets very serious when he disappoints him. He's conversational and he's intense. He's never one thing in a scene. And I love the dynamism of that character. George R. R. Martin described him as sort of the King Lear of this piece. And I feel like he's really treating it as a Shakespearean sort of role. Yeah. Even the scene with Rhaenyra where they were going through the prophecies in front of that big dragon skull, and he was talking about these dreams that he had that were haunting him. For a moment, he turned into Macbeth, being tortured by prophecy. And is it good to know what the future holds? Does that ruin you, or you're always trying to live up to that? I felt like in the middle of all these fun council meetings and tournaments and deaths and massacres, there was this one guy ricocheting between all of these Shakespearean tragic leads, and I just couldn't look away from him.
Yeah, he was really interesting. I think I had a hard time with him because he seemed like too good of a person. And I don't know if that's just me being bitter or if it's, it's Game of Thrones and it's the Targaryens, but he seemed like too noble a guy. I mean, he decided to kill his wife.
Yeah, really.
But like, is an impossible decision. And you know what I'm saying? Like, what would you have done?
But he didn't even ask, can we save her if we lose the baby?
I'm not saying
he didn't even ask.
I'm not saying he's Ned Stark, but I'm saying he seemed too good for a Targaryen.
Well, I feel
like he's maybe hiding something.
He's going to do some bad things with Alicent, and I think that's going to make up our mind on this.
Yes, for sure.
Not old
highly
enough.
illegal.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
No, I agree with you. He's a very interesting character, and he subverts a lot of what we have seen, to your point, from people in power in Game of Thrones. It seems like he's not a bad decision maker generally. He understands that he feels like the everyman kind of in the, on the throne. Like, he's not crazy like Joffrey and so many other people we saw sit the throne. He's not making irrational decisions. He's like an embodiment of the weight of the crown and trying to make the correct decisions, in a responsible way, but trying to balance out all of the other things, the relationships that he's got, especially with Daemon, right? He wants Daemon to be part of this and has tried apparently 2 or 3 different ways to give his brother a position of power, because he has some familial loyalty there. But he has to also, look out for and understand that he's sort of a loose cannon, and he listens to his advisors. He's really trying to give weight to their opinions and everything. He's not losing himself like we've seen other people do whenever
all of them.
He's told something that he doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're getting an example of someone who's ultimately a pretty good king. At least from face value. And I know he's starting in peacetime, so he hasn't really been tested. So perhaps he's a little naive on that front, but I don't think he's a bad dude. And his relationship with his daughter, right, it ends up being like he has a comeuppance. He says, look, I'm sorry I spent so many years wishing you were a boy. And then like bestows upon her this gift, right? And so we see him be good there too. So, and we have this underlying thing when we know he's got this gross wound on his back. That's right. So I think he's being set up to like, there's going to be a void when he's gone.
It's pretty incredible to be able to establish a character this quickly in a pilot so that they can already be surprising you. Like, what a compliment to the actor and the writers.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's a good point, Tristan, about how he's a subversion of what you expect. So it's like a subversion of a subversion. Because at this point, we expect Game of Thrones, or the Game of Thrones universe, multiverse, whatever the hell. You expect it, the GOTCU. you expect them to subvert your expectations and put all these like piece of shit, nasty characters, right? But then they're like, actually, we're going to give you a Targaryen who's not that terrible.
He's almost
has like some fairly pure motivations.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like he's not a Tywin Lannister. He's not like purely motivated by a desire for power and a desire to control. Like I believe that Viserys wants to be a good king. Not just that he wants to be the king, but wants to be a good king. And I know there's all kinds of what do you call it? Paradoxes with all that.
Oh, sure.
But like he's not a perfect guy. Like you saw him kind of be shitty to his daughter, and he didn't let his wife have any agency in her own life at the end. But, he seems, for the most part, pretty fairly motivated. And that's like a nice change. So that's pretty cool.
And this type of character, I feel like, would usually be very boring because he would become a straight man who's a foil to Daemon. So you could see how you're supposed to be, and he's the stern older brother.
It's the opposite.
But
he's the yin and yang.
He's totally volatile in his own right. I was asking Maggie earlier, like, what show does this remind you of? And this didn't really even remind me of Game of Thrones so much, or any Lord of the Rings property, as much as it did Versailles, which is a period piece about Louis the whatever
14th,
and it's about his conquest. And the center of that whole show, even though it's globetrotting through all these battles and reigns and betrayals, the center of that show in every single episode is the dynamic with the brother. And I know that House of the Dragon, I mean, this episode being about the line of succession and the heirs, I know Rhaenyra will end up being the lead, and I'm excited for that. But right now, the fact that it's King Viserys and Daemon exploring the hatred they have for each other, the trust they have for each other, almost I mean, like we talked about before, the curse and the blessing of the familial bond, the obligation, the inevitability of family. He keeps trying to turn Daemon to the good side, but even when Daemon screws up, he can't get rid of him. I love that sort of impossible familial tension as an anchor for this show.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. I mean, mine is like easy, but it's Succession, right?
Yes.
Again, because not just because it's a messed up family all trying to get power, but it's specifically about the family dynamics. It's about the sibling dynamics more than anything, because you have the dad who's the patriarch, but it's about the siblings and their relationships with each other. So we're going to get that with Daemon and Viserys, and then also with Rhaenyra and Alicent in a way. And then when Alicent is with the dad, that'll be weird. So, weird family dynamics are going to come up. So the Versailles comparison is really interesting.
It's so much messier with the family obligations because they're permanent. The other bit of sort of passing the baton casting that I noticed here was Graham McTavish, who was Dwalin in the Hobbit prequels,
Mhm.
as well as being a lead in
Yes.
Outlander and a bunch of other things. He's the big Scottish guy with the beard and the bald head and that great voice.
I love him.
And I feel like bringing him specifically from The Hobbit into this show is interesting because they're both prequels to a period piece. And it brings that greater historical interest, but also the sadness that he had in his relationship with Thorin through the Hobbit movies. He was always the guy who tried to pull him back from the edge. You could see the disappointment as Thorin was kind of falling for the dragon lust and everything in that story. And Dwalin, represented by Graham McTavish, had such patience and sadness and love for him. I feel like he foregrounded that idea, the tension and inevitability of family, really perfectly in this episode.
That's a really great comparison.
Yeah, that was almost going to be my my standout character because that's some straight up nobility that was on display. It seemed like the guy. It seemed like he was honorable, right? And from all the way from his reaction to Daemon sitting on the throne, he goes, "Oh my God," something to that effect. He's a pure guy. And that is very rare, especially for the Kingsguard, as we've seen. They're most of those guys are not great. So I'm interested to see where his story goes as well.
That pure reaction of recoiling at seeing the wrong person on the throne, it almost made me see this character as the new Ned Stark. It reminded me of him recoiling, seeing Jaime Lannister on the throne.
Yes.
Totally, yeah.
I'd love for someone that pure to be in this show, just as a little bit of a moral center.
Yeah, because you can't have everyone.
Yeah, and around past season 1.
Oh God. Yeah. I only had one complaint about the whole. Really, apart from that one line, my main complaint about the show. Are you ready?
Yes.
There's no theme song.
I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, I know that that's the move now. TV shows don't have theme songs anymore. They have a 2-second title card with like 3 notes or whatever. I want the full 2-minute sprawling map,
the sequence
theme song,
right,
and I'm upset.
And it almost dovetailed back into the Game of Thrones theme at the end.
What, Tristan?
Something on that. I don't know if you heard initially when they were doing those sweeping shots, those establishing shots of the inner workings of the Red Keep and the castle and everything that were the stories taking place. It was like an overture of the old theme, but it was played. I don't know if major key is the right word, but it was played in a more upbeat way. It had more flourishes and it sounded happier. It didn't sound so dire like the theme does in Game of Thrones. So they were playing in and around that, establishing, I don't know if it was the tone of the show totally or just that moment, sort of that innocence that will inevitably be corrupted in Game of Thrones land. But I did notice that early on.
It was a prosperous time compared to 200 years later.
It's a time of peace.
Right.
And,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. But I will say the song, the one track that's been released, at least on Spotify, is called The Prince That Was Promised. And it is not happy. It is very menacing and exciting and very, very good.
You liked it though?
Oh yeah. I listened to it like 45 times today. And that's not an exaggeration. But I mean like the little title sequence when like the logo comes up, it says House of the Dragon. Like it was cool, but I was like, there was something nice about, because we're trying to settle into this big, expansive fantasy world. I want something to ground me and get me there. And I feel like the Game of Thrones theme did that so well. And also it was cool because like you would know which characters you were going to see because you knew which places you were going to go. And I know that that's different here because we're not going all across Westeros. We're staying in King's Landing for the most part, but I just wanted something.
I mean, we could see a title sequence next episode.
Yeah, maybe like the next one. This one was just sort of like a cold open, and
there's a lot to do.
Yeah. So maybe
that's what I was thinking, because we're not going to have to do a prologue the next few episodes, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be like the doorbuster at the beginning of the next one. It's, oh my God, we get a sequence again.
I hope so. That would be so nice because I was really wanting that, and I was sad that I didn't get it.
Maggie, you also thought the episode was pretty dark at times.
Visually, yes. Like in terms
like
of
the brightness
lighting.
of the screen.
In terms of lighting, yeah. I don't know if you had this problem, Tristan, but we were like, can you see anything? Like we had to turn off all the lights in our apartment to see some of the darker like night scenes, and that was frustrating.
I didn't particularly have that problem, or at least if I did, it's not something that stuck out to me in the way that it is for you.
Weird. And I remember that was a problem with episode 3 of season 8.
The Long Night.
The Long Night. So you think they would have learned from that. But I had a hard, and maybe, I mean, our TV's not bad, so I don't know what it was, but I had a hard time seeing, I wanted to turn the brightness up on the screen, but I couldn't because we were watching on a TV. So that was a little frustrating.
What scenes are you thinking of?
Like the scene, when the gold cloaks are out at night, taking down all the people, when Matt Smith is in the brothel.
Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, when he's in his office and there's that one little shaft of light when Allison comes to visit.
Yeah, just like anything that was like really low light.
Viserys talking to Rhaenyra in that little dragon skull room.
Yeah,
that was pretty dark.
Yeah, so I mean, and I don't mind if things are dark, obviously, but I feel like an old lady. I can't see it. It's too dark. But
no, see, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that as I was watching it.
Maybe
so
it's
that might be
young
just
eyes.
like a TV specific thing.
No,
it could be.
You're younger than we are. Maybe that's it.
My under 30 eyes.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, Cam, you also gave me a prompt about Game of Thrones echoes.
Yeah, so I think the rest of my notes here are sort of comparing and contrasting things I noticed about this show with Game of Thrones. So I think something to start with is pacing, because this felt like plot-wise about 2 or 3 episodes of Game of Thrones, which I liked. I feel like we met everyone. We saw some betrayals. We saw some deaths. We almost saw like Daemon kind of go into exile at the end.
Right.
I mean, I liked it and I was eating it up when it was happening. But in the hours after, reflecting on it, it seems like we got a lot of plot for that character.
Yeah.
But knowing, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, that this show is probably only going to go 3 or 4 seasons because it's working from that finite source material, I think that works in the current culture of like dense miniseries when there are so many options. There's such a glut of television and movies. I think it's the same reason they don't have a title sequence, because they just want to get right into it. That's why the first thing they show you is a dragon.
They could have done a short one.
But,
I'm just saying.
But I kind of liked that miniseries like pacing. Maybe that's me getting older and just wanting more of an entree when I watch a show. But I loved digging through that much plot in an hour and 5 minutes.
Well, also, Game of Thrones couldn't move that quickly because it had a lot more characters to cover.
That's true.
You can't get as far with each character because you only have so much screen time. We got way more screen time because our main characters, how many do we have? We have Daemon, Rhaenyra, Viserys, Alicent, I guess.
Geralt.
I mean, that's it for our main characters, right? Game of Thrones, you have 15 main characters.
And they're all locations.
Yes. And so you have established all the families. Like, we're working with one family, one monarchy, like one thing, right? And so you have to cover a lot more ground in Game of Thrones. So that's also part of why we're moving faster. But I think that's a good point, that it's a response to like the concentrated miniseries.
Talking about that, focusing in on one family here. Something that really hit me today when I was looking over my notes was the shadow that the Lannisters cast over this episode for me. Because yes, I know the stories about the Targaryens. We've known that since the announcement of the show. But if it's all people walking around the Red Keep, drinking wine, visiting brothels, there's blonde incest about, there's the Iron Throne in half the scenes, and the rest of it is council meetings, that is all Lannister stuff for the entirety of Game of Thrones until maybe the last 2 or 3 episodes. Yeah. I like that House of the Dragon scratches that Lannister itch, because that's most of what I loved so much about Game of Thrones. But I like that we get to remix it and we get to see those familiar settings and activities with such a different type of person. We don't have a Tywin who's cold and calculating with a clean strategy for every single eventuality.
Right.
We get a fresh volatility. We get Daemon leading a massacre of the people and then doing some stand-up roasting a dead baby in a brothel. Like the way Viserys storms out of a meeting and flares up at people, and he flips on his advisors as much as his advisors flip on each other. There's already in one episode a feeling that this group of people, this
family.
Yeah, well I meant
House.
this regime is what I meant.
Okay.
This regime is unsustainable.
Yeah.
These people are going down and they're going to ruin each other. And like a car crash or like a great episode of Succession, I just want to watch it all burn down. It's not like Game of Thrones where I want to see Jon on the throne and Tyrion can be his hand. I want to see all of these people wiped out.
Sure.
And they will do that for me.
Sure. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Okay,
Yeah.
so question. There were like 3 scenes where they were sure to zoom in on the table of the council, and they're putting these little like marble
little
balls
balls.
in
Yeah.
some sort of a hole.
Uh-huh.
What in God's name
Yeah.
is that supposed to be?
I think that's how they like
And why does it matter?
I think that's how they kind of buzz in.
But did it like turn on the lights?
Is that like the conch? Is that the conch? Are we dealing with Piggy?
like if you steal someone's marble, do you get their place?
No, I think that was kind of that seemed to me like a symbolic way that they sort of check in and clock into their respective seats. I don't know. Not so they
They're
get
sitting there.
yeah.
They're in the seat.
Yeah.
There was a lot of emphasis on the marbles.
Yeah, we saw like 3 or 4 times.
Maybe that's the next line of merch HBO's
So
looking
they
at.
must mean something.
Maybe they're gonna play a game of marbles later. I don't know. Maybe they're like dried, preserved dragon eyes or something. I don't know. I have no idea what to do.
Okay,
with
but
that.
theories. What could they be?
It might be a precursor to like the pin that you give a Hand of the King, where it's some sort of symbolic thing that.
But he was wearing it.
That's true.
You big dumb dummy.
Yeah, I kept checking to see if it activated something at the table because there was that big, cool, torchy chandelier above.
Yeah, but
them.
that's just fire.
Yeah,
There's no electricity.
Yeah. I did love that. I noticed that.
I really think it's just a symbolic way for them to say like I'm here and I am participating.
Because there was no magic in this episode.
No, none at all. I mean, except for the
No.
hint of like they're like we can touch fire magic, but that's it.
Yeah, but there were no magical
Yes.
devices.
That was
Right.
there.
There's no wildfire. There's no. I mean, yeah, the only magic really. I mean, but that's how it is in Game of Thrones as well. Unless you have someone like Melisandre, who's like an enchantress or whatever.
I feel like someone's gonna, like Daemon's gonna be playing with his marble, and Rhaenyra's gonna ask about it. There was such a visual focus on them throughout this episode.
We all noticed
Yeah.
it.
We've got to see them again.
Yeah.
We have to have that explained to us.
I'm glad you brought those
Well,
up.
and
Tristan.
also, yeah. I want to know eventually. I hope it pays off eventually. Hopefully they're not like the what was the green chemical that was the
wildfire.
that exploded or whatever. What was that
yeah.
shit called? Wow, there. Well, yep, there it is, right there. But speaking of magic, right? There really wasn't any overt magic here, but we did have the group of people who are like caretakers of the dragons,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we had that one scene where I don't remember if it was Daemon or Viserys who said it, but they were talking about how the secret to the Targaryens' power is that they've made everyone believe that they control the dragons, but that's an illusion.
Right.
So how much of that are they offloading onto this class of people who are taking care of the dragons? And eventually, are we going to see the dragons turn on their masters? Because if you notice at that last scene where Daemon ultimately takes off on, I think, Syraxes, he didn't seem super happy to see Daemon, and that's the first time that we've seen a dragon react sort of negatively to a Targaryen.
Yeah. Well, do we know canonically why the dragons go extinct?
No, I do know that this section of history from Fire and Blood that's being adapted is called The Dance of Dragons or The Dance with Dragons. And they kept advertising that we're starting with 17 dragons. There's no way we end with 17
Well, no,
dragons.
because by the time you get to Game of Thrones, all the dragons are supposedly gone.
Right.
So what happens?
I mean, maybe they just turn on each other. Like, say Daemon goes rogue and takes his dragon with him, and he tries to, like, fly on, the Red Keep and burn it down. Maybe the dragon doesn't want to do that because all of his dragon buddies are there. Or if you make them fight each other, they turn on humans. I think we could see them almost return to an animal state instead of seeing all these dragon whisperers that are taming them.
Right.
I mean, like, this story is one of civil war. And
Yeah.
I because the dragons do seem so human and fleshed out, I'm wondering what happens when you turn them on each other, because they're not just nuclear weapons. They have brains. We see them react. We see the one almost seem to like Rhaenyra when she jumps off of it.
I mean, the line over and over throughout this episode is that the Targaryen house will be its own undoing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think...
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so if you extend that to the dragons, it's like they will be the reason the dragons go extinct because they destroy themselves and they destroy the dragons in the process. So yeah, I think we're all kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
There's like whatever Targaryen civil war happens, the dragons will be used and they will kill each other out.
But like in Game of Thrones, we lost 3 dragons. We got 3 and then we lost 3.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of them died easy. Like the one that died over the water that got hit with the arrow.
Honestly, that was a big part of why I didn't like. That's one of the many things that was disappointing was the death of the dragons was too easy.
No, but that one dragon, the one that made it to the end that Daenerys ripped through half of Westeros with, we've seen the destruction capable from one of those. Yeah. If it's wielded by a Targaryen with some sort of, bloodlust, 17 dragons could level Westeros.
Yeah, right.
And I think it being a miniseries, we have to see that carnage pretty quick.
Sure.
I don't know who the first one to go rogue is. I hope it's Daemon, but I also want Matt Smith to be in season 2.
I know.
So maybe it could be someone else.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I feel like we didn't get much of the dragons in this episode. We got, we've established that they are controlled by the Targaryens and that they are ridden by them and they look cool and they're part of their funeral services. That's kind of all we've seen. And so I'm excited to see more.
That funeral was interesting. That was one of my kind of Game of Thrones echoes here. Watching the Game of Thrones pilot, we noticed, I think the centerpiece of that episode was the Stark kids gathering to watch their father perform an execution. And here, the whole realm gathers to watch a father lead a burial.
Sure.
And that again felt like sort of a thesis statement for the show, that this is going to be simultaneously broader and more intimate than Game of Thrones was. Yeah. There's a wider scope. We're seeing the world. We are kings and queens and alliances, but there's such a sharp focus on, like you said, Maggie, maybe 3 main characters versus 6 or 7 in Game of Thrones. I like that there weren't many pointed echoes. There weren't many like cheap shot callbacks. Yes, we heard a Stark introduce himself, but no one winked at the camera. It was like, you get it? You get it? Like in a bad Eminem song where he'll like do a sound effect after a punchline and it kind of ruins it because you had laughed, but now you knew he wasn't confident in it and he was trying to punch it up.
Yeah, like you could have had one of the dragons named Daenerys or something. Like it would have been so easy and they didn't do
that. But did you guys remember? Did you guys remember the part, or did you catch the part where after his wife dies or whatever, and they're at the table and all of his counselors are yelling at him, and then he says something to the effect, "I'm not going to let let the crown or something become a feast, basically a feast for crows."
Yes,
right.
I did.
They name dropped the title of Feast for Crows.
Yes, that was pretty cool. He said so
that was cool.
Yeah, I won't let you. I got it.
We also heard the Song of Ice and Fire phrase, which I was okay with because they finally explained the fucking thing.
Yes, I was okay with that too.
After 8 years of it just being a vague title.
I was okay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And I liked them explaining.
Well, also fun thought experiment. Fun thought experiment. What if Viserys had been the king when the White Walkers came?
He still would have killed his wife.
Yeah.
What I mean, he actually believed it, right?
Yeah,
he believed the prophecy.
I know.
Well, right.
Yes.
Right. I think he would have done a better job than fucking Cersei did.
But maybe
So,
that
yeah.
explains why Dany kind of gave up her mission to help Jon and fight the White Walkers.
Sure, yeah, because as insane as the Targaryens are, they're not as calculating and I mean, the Lannisters are fucking insane.
Right,
So,
but they're insane because they're too tactical and they overthink things.
Yes.
You could make an argument based on Viserys' conversations in this episode that Targaryens are driven insane. We referenced Macbeth earlier.
Yes.
The idea of the corruption of prophecy. The entire play is about witches saying, hey, you're going to die and you're going to have kids. And then they just kill each other for 5 acts.
Like, yeah, that's a good point. The Targaryens are driven insane. That makes a lot more sense. I think the Targaryens are a bit more instinctual, and the Lannisters are just so calculating. So,
did you catch the "Promise Me" callback?
Oh yeah. Who sang it? "Promise Me, Rhaenyra." Who keeps saying it?
I don't remember who said it, but it's a callback to the "Promise Me, Ned," where we see Ned Stark and the Targaryen, I guess.
Well, no, you see Lyanna Stark.
Yeah,
who was with Jon's mother.
Right.
Who was she with?
So there's a Targaryen connection.
Prince Rhaegar?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. She asked, Ned promised her that he would take care of Jon. Anyway.
And that is a direct callback. That could seem cheap, but there's a tragedy to it where it just suggests this common Targaryen downfall, this family connection. Where there is an inevitability to a Targaryen leader going insane. People threw that insult at Dany for 8 seasons.
Yes.
I'm glad that is still true. But I know this is a successor show to Game of Thrones. I was glad that there weren't really any clear successor characters. I can't really name a new Jon, a new Dany,
new
Tyrion, Arya, Bran, maybe Sansa.
I mean, the closest is that Viserys is the new Ned, but that's such a stretch.
Yeah, because it's more Graham McTavish.
Right.
He's more the new Ned. But there's not a new Tyrion.
I mean, you could say Rhaenyra is the new Dany, but not really. That's I think really derivative and insulting to women. So
well, yeah, because Daenerys, and I wrote about this a little too, because Daenerys is in exile. She like Rhaenyra does not have outside advisors in the same way Dany did. Right. Rhaenyra does not have a long march to Westeros. She doesn't have an absentee yearning for family.
And she's not nearly as power hungry as Dany is. I mean, she's power hungry, but she's not insane.
She's not like romanticizing the legend of the Targaryens. She's seeing her dad treated like shit for 20 years.
Yeah,
they are very different characters where it doesn't feel like cheap knockoffs.
Right.
I think that's all I had for the Game of Thrones notes.
This is really all I had too. Tristan, I don't know if you had anything else, but
no, I mean I think we hit all of the highlights that I can think of from the episode.
Awesome.
Cool.
I like that we didn't know the title of the episode until it was over.
I know. I forgot. We did ask you guys, the listener.
Oh yeah.
The listener singular. I like to refer to them as one. We asked for you guys' thoughts and opinions, and we'll try to reach out earlier. I think we'll reach out Sunday night next week to get you guys to send us feedback. We're getting used to this, right? This is a new thing we're trying. But we just wanted to see what you guys' thoughts were. By the way, Cam, where can people most easily engage with us?
Second Breakfast Pod at Substack, Gmail, Instagram, and TikTok.
I said most easily. You had to pick one. Substack. There you go. We have a Substack in case you haven't been here.
Yeah, and I sent out one today.
Yes.
We'll do it on Sunday next time, but it'll go right to your inbox and you can just comment on that and your comments will get right to us.
Yeah, but we just did a little poll on Instagram. We asked, what did you think of the episode? 100% loved it. 0% didn't love it.
100%.
So 100% of our followers who responded said that they loved it. We also got, one person said, I had a few nitpicks, but overall it had me hooked. They adored the costuming and design. We didn't talk about the costumes at all, but because
you didn't notice them because
they
were
worked. They were beautiful.
Felt true.
They were so good. I loved Rhaenyra's.
They were right in there.
The red dress that Rhaenyra is wearing at the tournament and that collar she has, that like almost Elizabethan collar, is so cool. And just the costumes were all
even
really
Daemon's
good.
Stupid helmet.
Yeah, his stupid fucking helmet. It was so cool, and obviously all the hair was great. Like this show,
that was ripped directly out of a an illustration.
Oh, was it?
I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Oh, I'm gonna look it up.
Seen it, but it immediately made me think of I think it's it's like an image of when Rhaegar is fighting Robert Baratheon on the Trident, and he's wearing that regalia. It's like it seems to be like the armor of like the first knight or the first son of the Targaryens. But I've seen that armor before, and it looks like it's pulled directly out of that. It's a really cool picture. Cool. It's got you see the Targaryen armor with the dragon wings, and then you've got the Baratheon armor with the giant antlers on it. It's a really cool picture, but it looks like it's ripped directly from that. And I did think it was a little silly. I wish that they had pulled the wings in a little bit and made them a little smaller and practical, I guess.
I could tell it wasn't made of metal. I could tell it was like soft plastic, and that was not great. But other than that, it was great.
Someone, I don't remember where it was. I think it was Instagram. Someone messaged us that the knife that Viserys is kind of absently playing with is the same one that Arya uses to kill the Night King.
Which I think is the same one that...
It's the one. That's the one.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. That dagger looked very familiar.
Which is also the one that tries to kill Bran.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The one that is like given to Tyrion to make it look like Tyrion hired someone to kill Bran, but Littlefinger really had it. Anyway, yeah. So that was pretty cool.
I can't believe that this was a pilot, because I feel right back in. I feel anchored and settled into this world again. I know the characters. I'm just hyped for more. Like this so exceeded my expectations of whatever was going to be next in Westeros. But it also just, I've got all those nice warm feelings again. I'm thrilled with this episode.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so excited for next week.
No, I definitely think that this is sort of a return to form. This was a welcome back home. And now next week we're going to go back in. They're going to have torn the banners down, and it's going to be, no holds barred, destroy your feelings all over again. Exactly what we were looking for out of this.
I want 9 more weeks of pain.
Yep, that's what I've signed up for. Okay, pals. So next week, as soon as you watch the episode, send us an email or a DM or whatever you feel like doing. Send us a carrier pigeon letter. I don't know. Maybe not. That won't be fast enough. So we can incorporate your thoughts.
Yep. And on Friday, we'll be back with the next chapter of the next Witcher book, The Time of Contempt.
Yep.
And, I think we both want to thank Tristan for finally joining us for a full episode.
Oh,
and
I don't.
I hope he joins us again.
It's been long enough.
Next week.
Yeah, no. He's gonna be on for as much as he wants for these episodes. We're
Absolutely,
very excited.
Yeah.
If you don't like Tristan as a co-host, send us an email, secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com. Okay.
So go make a new
You're
email.
Stuck with me. It doesn't matter.
He has to go start a new free trial to watch next week.
I paid for it. I bought it this time.
Aww. You bought HBO.
Yes, he paid for it, like Damon.
All right.
We already did the plugs.
All right. Anything else,
No,
Cam?
that's it.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon.